To start making white bread, first you want to get your warm water and mix it with the yeast. An easy way to tell if the temperature of your water is right, just stick your finger in it, and if it's about what you want the temperature of your bath, then that's right. If you stick your finger in and it's too hot to touch, too hot. If you stick your finger in and it's just warm, too cold. We need the water to be warm so that it activates the yeast. Go ahead and sprinkle your yeast on top of the water. Give it a quick stir and set it aside to proof for about 5 minutes. This is called proofing because we're testing to see if the yeast is alive and active. Eventually it will form a creamy, foamy layer on top. That's how you know the yeast is alive and active. If your water is too hot, it will kill the yeast and it won't rise. Next, we'll measure out our flour into a large mixing bowl. Now, to properly measure flour, it should not be packed at all into the measuring cup. That's why we're using a fork to put it in the measuring cup. And you want it to be as accurate as possible, so that's why we use a knife to level off the top of it. Go ahead and add your salt to the flour. Also, go ahead and add your sugar to the flour and salt mixture. Give it a good stir. The sugar won't make this a sweet bread, but it will give good flavor. Here is the yeast. You can see that layer on top. That means the yeast is alive and active and ready to add to our flour mixture. Melt the butter, add it to your flour mixture, and give everything a good stir. Sandwich bread relies on gluten development. So for this sandwich bread, we're going to be kneading it for at least 10 minutes. When you knead it, the gluten strands get stronger, which makes the dough elastic and it will ensure good structure. Now, if you don't have a stand mixer with a dough hook, you can just sprinkle some flour on the countertop, dump your dough out, and then knead it by hand. Katie will show here how that's done. Sprinkle some more flour on top and on your hands. And you start to fold the dough over on itself and squish it into the counter over and over and over. One of the reasons we would recommend using a stand mixer is so that you don't have to add extra flour during the kneading process because it will get sticky. That will result in a tougher dough. If you use less flour, it'll be a little softer. You can see here that the gluten hasn't developed very much, See how the bread tears when she holds it up? We're gonna go ahead and add it to our mixing bowl and then put it on the mixer to knead for about 10 minutes. Here is the bread about halfway. You can see it's much stretchier than it was at first, but it still kind of falls apart. We're looking for a specific effect called the window pane test. Katie's going to demonstrate what that is here. When you pull the dough and stretch it thin, it'll stretch really thin and you'll be able to see light through it. When you can see light through the dough, you know it's ready. See how she pulls it apart and you can see light through it before it starts to tear? That's called the window pane effect. And that's an ideal spot for your bread dough to be before it starts to rise. Now that we've reached the window pane effect, we're going to cover it with a clean towel and let it sit until it's doubled in size, about an hour. Okay, it's been an hour. Here's what it looks like. You can see it's doubled in size. Now we're going to sprinkle some flour on our counter and work it a little more just to work out the air bubbles. Then we'll shape it into our loaf and put it in our loaf pan. So Katie has worked out the air bubbles, just tucking it under and pushing it under. And then it's going to create a nice smooth top with tension. That's what you're looking for. So once you've made it into a ball with some tension on top, throw it in your loaf pan and let it rise for another 30 to 45 minutes. So that's the bread when it's risen. At this point, we're going to put it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. Here it is coming out of the oven. Beautiful golden brown on top. Should be very firm when you flick it. It will get softer as it cools. And you can turn it out onto a cooling rack almost immediately when it comes out of the oven. Now, if you want softer edges, you can brush it with butter and it will create soft edges. I left mine the way it is because I like a little bit firmer on the outside. And here I'm just going to slice it so you can see what it looks like on the inside. It will slice much better when it's cool because it will hold its shape. Here the loaf is still warm, but not hot. You can see how well it holds its shape. You can see those nice even air bubbles in the middle. You can see how it doesn't crumble apart. That means it's got good gluten development. Beautiful loaf of bread.